when anyone is starting out, they just think, oh, मैं कुछ ना कुछ post कर दूंगा यहाँ वहाँ, and I'll see how that goes. I know Gen Zs care a lot about the environment and they care a lot about making an impact in society. LinkedIn would of course be easier, but Instagram, if your reel goes viral, then you'll be able to tap into a lot more newer audiences. So I think the biggest mistake people make is not being able to understand who their audience is. For me, quality matters any day. We don't want controversies, we don't want drama, and I know it's a strategy that a lot of people use to get clickbaits and get views.
What if I say that you can brand yourself? Well, yes, today we are going to have a discussion on personal branding. Hello everyone, this is Dipali and you're watching Millennium Times. Well, if we talk about personal branding, it's something to brand yourself, to promote yourself, essentially putting yourself out to the audience, telling them who you are, what you stand for, and what makes you better from your competitors. And to give us an overview about all of this, we have with us Miss Aastha Tyagi, and she is a personal branding expert. She has doubled Shashi Tharoor's Instagram followers from 100K to 250K within a month. She is known for making her clients go viral for their content. And the rest, let's hear it from Aastha herself. Hi Aastha, how are you doing today?
Hi Dipali. I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm really excited to talk everything around personal branding.
Right. So Aastha, being a personal branding expert, this question must have come to you a lot of times. Tell us, what is personal branding? How do we brand this? And how do I promote myself? But before going into that conversation, I want you to tell me, what is personal branding and how important is it?
Yeah, for sure. I think before I talk about what is personal branding, I want to say what is personal branding is not. It's not just uploading one post on social media or writing one article there or putting something on LinkedIn and thinking you're building a personal brand. I think just as a company's communications needs a complete sort of department to build it, personal brand requires that as well. It requires your PR, your social media, your content strategy, the way you look, the way you dress, your stylist, everything and anything around you as a brand comes under it. So it's a very big sort of space that people are still exploring, and it's very popular in the US and the UK, but in India, it's something that people have just started doing. A lot of leaders in India have started giving it a lot of weight than they used to earlier, but it's still not big as it is. So for me, a personal brand is basically building someone's brand just as you would for an organization or for a company, but doing it for an individual. Now, that doesn't mean that a person goes on social media and talks about everything that they like. That's not what a personal brand is. Personal brand is figuring out what is something that sets them apart and gives them something of value that their audience would like, plus helps them deliver on their business goals or their personal goals. So it's a lot more strategic than just uploading a social media post. And it's a very holistic sort of approach where you build someone's identity over a period of time. Yeah.
Right. And being a branding expert, it's not just about marketing. It's something that you be a marketer for someone and you have to go through everything. And some of them must have done so many things. And so do you have any special methods to identify and articulate someone's unique proposition or something like that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I wouldn't say it's a method per se, but I think it's a lot of understanding who a person really is. And for anyone who's watching it, I think those who are watching it today will be interested in how they can also build their personal brand in some way or aspect. So I think what I like doing is writing down everything that the person has, right? Be it from their gender to their background, to anything quirky about them, to the kind of food they like, to the kind of language they speak, anything that I would know about that person. And then it's about figuring out where are the gaps in the market. So say, for instance, if I pick someone who's living in a city, is a young working adult, works in a corporate, now that's a lot of people in India who are doing that right now, right? But how do you set yourself apart? Say, for instance, you're a first generation girl to have gone to university, or you're someone who comes from this so-and-so town, or you're someone who has a very peculiar way of understanding movies. It could be anything and anything that's a kind of sets you apart, that gives you an edge. So the method would be, if I have to break it down, would be to first write down everything that you think kind of defines you. And from there, try to figure out what are some things that if I were to put two or three of them together, that would give me a sort of advantage over others, a unique selling proposition in that case. I think the most important thing is figuring out your niche. So in that sense, say a food blogger, there's so many food bloggers in India right now, right? But if you wanted to stand out, could you be a food blogger who kind of blogs in Bihari or Punjabi? Now that's a kind of niche market that you're tapping into where not a lot of people are there. And the best way of doing that is I always ask for any of the clients that I'm working with, what is my only I statement? So if I had to say that only I can do this or can do that, and sure, there'll be other people who could do it, but I can do it really well or better than other people. I think that's where the magic lies. It's not about talking about everything and anything, because that way your brand is all over the place. And that's where a lot of people go wrong when trying to build their personal brand. They'll talk about their work and their movies and their background. No one wants to know that, right? When there's so much clutter on social media, people don't want to know every single thing about you. So the best thing is to figure out what sets you apart when you put two or three things about you together, and then really hone in on that, like really focus on bringing that aspect of your identity out. So say for Dr. Tharoor, if that's the fact that he speaks English in a very peculiar way and, is very good at speaking English, could that be his USP? Or in my last job, be it for Mr. Anil Agarwal, if it's a fact that, is someone who comes from Bihar and has that story of a first-gen entrepreneur, which not a lot of other billionaires have, could that be a unique selling proposition? So focusing on figuring out the unique thing about every individual, I think that's where the magic lies.
Well, that's one golden advice that our viewers must have got. Also, when you're dealing with a client, you have to do the research, the work they've done, and starting from 0 to 100, everything you have to go through before doing their personal branding. So do you have any special strategy? Yet again, I'm asking about your strategies.
Yeah. No, please do.
To connect with the specific target audience, that this audience might, enjoy their content, or this audience might enjoy their content.
Yeah. No, that's a very good question. I think one thing that I would like to say is before you start focusing on building your content, the first thing you need to do is really understand your audience. And I think that's also another thing that people get wrong sometimes. A lot of times people are so focused on building their brand and figuring out what they want to talk about that they completely forget that, does their audience care about that? What does their audience care about? And it doesn't even have to be the existing audience. Say there's someone who wants to tap into another audience, say youth, right? Like young people. And you may not be young yourself, but you're really keen on tapping into youth, which is what a lot of marketers these days want. They want Gen Zs and millennials. So when you're trying to tap into a very specific market, you really have to understand what are some things that they care about. For instance, it could be as basic as, is there a new TV show or a new shoes company or a new brand that they care about? I know Gen Zs care a lot about the environment and they care a lot about, making an impact in society. But they also care about fashion and brands a lot more than previous generations. So having that kind of intel really helps in tapping into the right audience. So say, for instance, when you talk about moment marketing, for a brand, it looks very different for an organization's brand. You could talk about World Cup in a very different way. You could go and you could, put out a creative on World Cup, or you could do moment marketing in various ways. But when you're trying to build a personal brand, moment marketing happens in a very different way. So instead of just, saying, oh, I'm so glad, the World Cup happened and we lost or we won, the trick lies in understanding a specific moment in that. So say if there was a leader who was a great leader who, even though they failed, the leader helped their team provide them with a lot of comfort. If that's a cool story for you to tell, and if that's something that resonates with you as a leader, your audience would be way more interested in hearing that just that basic congratulations tweet, which is what a lot of people get wrong. So I think more than understanding and focusing on your content, you really need to understand what is your audience and what do they care about, and tweaking your content around that. So say, for instance, a lot of young people care about jobs these days, or they care a lot about their careers. So if you're in a leadership position, be it in business or in any other way, if you're in managerial position, if you come out and you talk about how others can get jobs or how others can excel in their careers, they will find that advice a lot more interesting than you talking about your business in textiles or your business in any other field, right? So I think audience becomes a key there. Now, the second thing in terms of strategy that really helps is having a content calendar. And I'll go into that later as well, when that comes up, because it's something that not a lot of people take seriously. And I think that's a key of building your strategy. A lot of times, people go out and just post something on a Sunday morning. They wake up and they feel like, okay, today I'm going to build my personal brand. They open their LinkedIn, they write something and they forget about it. But I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that you can make when building your brand, because it really has to be a long-term strategic goal. Once you know what you want to talk about, you need to figure out what your content pillars are. What are some few sort of themes that you want to focus on? Let's say I want to talk about career, I want to talk about marketing, figure out your niche in terms of this is my niche I want to talk about. And then build your calendar. No matter what, you have to be consistent with it. You can't just post randomly. And when you're building a calendar, make sure that there's variety there, similar to no one likes to eat the same food every day. Think of your content the similar way. When you're putting your content out, your audience doesn't want to hear you talking about the same thing over and over again. Give them a bit of variety, move between various themes. If there are 4 themes that you're focusing on in a week, have all 4 covered, and then next week have, 4 more covered. Don't just talk about one theme the whole week. So I think that's also very, very important. Having good media relations also goes a long way. Now, this is very specific. This is more for very prominent leaders. It may not be relevant for everyone, trying to build their personal brand on day to day. But as important as social media is, having good media relations, having good PR team, work through putting out positive stories or work through putting out your work also really helps. But that's a bit more specific, so I won't go into the niche for this session.
Right, absolutely. And also, you mentioned Gen Z somewhere and the platforms. Now, if you talk about platforms, Gen Zs are more into Instagram and everything. But if you talk about the professionals, we are more into LinkedIn and, things like that. So which of the platform is best suited? How do you decide that? What platform is best suited for which brand or which client? So how do you figure that out?
Very important. I think with the kind of digital age we're in, platforms are changing on a daily basis. There's every single day, not even if there's not a new platform coming out, there's a new feature that's coming out, and it's extremely important to be up to date with all of them. But it's also important to know which platform to be on and which platform to not be on. So when I say to not be on, it really depends what your ask is. If you're really big, very big, prominent leader, then of course you should be on all platforms, because there's an audience, even right now, on Twitter and on Facebook. On Facebook, you might be able to reach out to a very regional audience. You might be able to reach out to particular tier 2, tier 3 cities and people from specific backgrounds that you wouldn't be able to reach out on other platforms. On Twitter, you'll be able to tap into really good government officials and spokespersons and media journalists. So Twitter has its own niche when it comes to government and media. But again, those two are, again, very specific for leaders who have a very, very big presence. If you're not that, and if you're not in that category, then perhaps having a Facebook and having a Twitter is really not needed, because those platforms don't generate the kind of virality or reach that you would want organically anymore. So as an update platforms, if you're a really big personality, say if you're Obama or someone, then it makes sense for you to be on all platforms. But if that's not the case, then you can avoid those two. Now coming to LinkedIn and Instagram, again, both are very, very important platforms, but I think it's important to understand who your target audience is and what your objective is. What is your business objective? If your business objective is to, say, get more clients, if you're a freelancer or if you're starting out your own startup, then of course you have to be on both platforms, because both of them help you get kind of clients you want. LinkedIn would, of course, be easier, but Instagram, if your reel goes viral, then you'll be able to tap into a lot more newer audiences. But if that's not your business objective, if you're not trying to get new clients, or you just basically are a working professional who wants to be seen by other working professionals and managers, then you can easily be on LinkedIn. You don't need to create reels on Instagram, and you'll still be able to get a really good reach. And LinkedIn is a great, great platform for that. With the new top voice that they've introduced, if you're very consistent with the kind of content you're posting, it's not very hard for you to get that as well. But if you want to start your small business, or you already have a business and you want it to boom, then definitely be on Instagram. And don't post creatives on Instagram, or don't post photos there. Just figure out your real strategy, come up with various content pieces you want to talk about, tap into trends whenever you can, but definitely be on Instagram because that's where your clients, majority of your potential clients would be.
Right, right. So having a
Yeah.
brand strategy is very important before posting anything or letting you out, something like that. Also, if I say nobody's perfect, everybody makes mistakes. And if someone is new into this field of personal branding, someone like me will make mistakes on regular basis. But do you find any common mistakes that people make while branding themselves?
Yeah, a lot. A lot. I think the biggest mistake people make is when they're starting out, they create content for themselves and not for their audience. So you'll see people writing paragraphs after paragraphs on LinkedIn, which is just not needed because no one has the time to read that. Or they'll be sharing some interesting thing on a Sunday afternoon that people don't care about. So I think the biggest mistake people make is not being able to understand who their audience is. And what that essentially leads to is whenever you're creating content, a lot of times, even if someone is a good content creator and is someone who understands personal brand, the mistake they often make is they create content that their audience would want to view, but not share. And what I mean by that is, be it on Instagram or LinkedIn, if you're putting something out and it's something that your audience likes seeing, that, oh, you did this on a Sunday afternoon, or you went for some kind of a charity event, or you hosted this event with your friends or your family, or you did any kind of project, they'll be interested in seeing it, but they won't share it. No one is going to share you talking about some company event you went to, right? But if you were to figure out an interesting anecdote or story from it, like, oh, I went to this company event where I met someone who I had known 10 years ago, or I went there and I realized that these kind of events are good, but your personal time with the family is more important. If you're giving an insight or an opinion, or you're sharing an interesting story with your audience, now that's a reason for them to share it more. So I think another mistake that people make is they don't think about content in that way. They don't think about, would my audience share this if they were to see it on social media? Forget about your audience. Ask it yourself. If you were to see that on social media, would you share it with your friends? If the answer is a no, then maybe you're going wrong somewhere, right? Another big mistake that people make is they just try to wing it. Like when anyone is starting out, they just think, oh, main kuch na kuch post kar dunga yahan wahan, and I'll see how that goes, which is understandable. I get how overwhelming it can be in the beginning, but you really, really have to be consistent. And the best sort of strategy advice that I can give you is have your content for the next 1 month planned before you even start posting. Like there's no rush in posting. No one is going anywhere. You'll still get the numbers you want, but just hold your horses, figure out what you want to talk about, take that time for yourself. Once you have a content for the next 1 month, then go full force at it. Because the worst thing you can do is bring in gaps in your on your social media. The worst, because the reason is the algorithm on, be it on LinkedIn or Instagram, on any platform, if you're inactive, they'll think of it as a spam. So when you post again after a few months, your reach will massively decline, and your audiences would have found new people to follow. So don't make that mistake. Just make sure you have enough content to keep you going for 1 month at any point of time.
Right. I think you narrowed it down from complex to simpler form for all of us. And someone who is looking for a personal branding, this video would be very helpful for them, because all these things are points and suggestions and everything that is going to help them a lot. Besides, if I talk about the YouTube platforms and Instagram platforms, I think these things now cost something. If something has to go viral, even if I talk about the branding part, there is amount. So what kind of investment should someone expect before, getting onto this and getting aware of all of these things, getting out for personal branding?
Yeah. So I have a slightly controversial take on it. I don't know if a lot of people would agree with it or something that people would do, but the way I look at investment is very different. I wouldn't really recommend investing in the standard ads like what a lot of people do, because the moment you're on any social media platform and you see sponsored, we automatically are wired to skip past it. We automatically are like, no, I don't want to see anything sponsored being given to me. It's extremely, extremely rare that a sponsored post ends up going viral. It doesn't happen. So if you do have to invest in something, there are a few things you can invest in. One is getting the right equipment. So if you're creating reels on Instagram, make sure you have a good tripod, a basic decent camera, good lighting, like invest in things that will make your content good. If you're writing on LinkedIn and you're not really a good writer, or you don't really understand what to talk about, get a freelancer content writer who can help you with content. Like, that
Yeah.
money of investment will be much, much, much more effective than putting money into ads. And if you're a big leader, be it in politics or be it in business, a lot of times what started happening with a lot of agencies is they'll tell you that, oh, we should collaborate with this influencer, that influencer. If you look at any data for any company, partnering with an influencer, until unless there's a massive strategy and money behind it, it doesn't yield the results you want. So if you're getting an influencer for 15K, 20K, even 40K, it doesn't actually lead to any substantial increase in your followers or your reach or your engagement, which is something that people still are yet to realize. So if you're putting your money in, don't put any investment in external things, put investment in yourself. Like, if there's a course you need to learn, if there's videos you need to watch, like, put that investment in yourself. And if you don't have the time and space, and if you have the money to hire someone who can help you build that. But ads on Instagram just don't work, and ads on LinkedIn, they don't work. So putting that money in is a big waste of time.
I think that was most important part of our podcast. This needs to be out and loud, that investing into things like ads is more important. You invest into something that is going to give you a good output. Also,
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
coming to my last questions, what key performance indicators do you use to measure the success of a client? Like, this is
Yeah.
going to be a success, or this
Yeah.
content will make this thing go viral. So what are the key points?
Yeah. Yeah. So do you mean in terms of the delivery, like in the end result, or do you mean when you're making something?
Like when you're person branding someone. So what are the
Yeah.
key indicators that you realize that this is going to be a success and I've done this
Yeah.
much, this might go as a successful thing that I've done. So what are the
Okay.
points that
Yeah.
you see?
Yeah, yeah. So there are two ways of looking at it. One is after the content or after the thing goes live, and one is before. So key indicators that I would look at success would, for me, quality matters any day. So I've managed big teams and agencies and whatnot. And in all of this, what happens a lot of time is people would come to you, and just because they have to follow a certain content calendar, they'll come and they'll be like, oh, let's do this, let's do that. My first reaction to all of this is, until and unless it's good content, we won't post it. Even if it takes a day or two or a week to get the right story out, we won't post it. There's no rush whatsoever. And there have been times when I've rejected multiple posts and articles and everything just because I haven't been fully satisfied with it. So I think the most important thing, a key indicator, is good quality. Like, do you really think that this is high quality value content that would work on social media? And once a piece is live, what I look at, the few metrics that I follow. One is, of course, numbers on social media, reach, engagement, followers, all of that. Another one is share of voice. So if you're a big leader, what is the share of voice in the market compared to your competitors? Is that been increased over a period of time? Another big one that's quite important is sentiment. So say a lot of times, just to get virality, people will post really controversial stuff. They might get really good reach on it, but the sentiment that they'll have from people, say for instance, with the CEO of Bombay Shaving Company, they made a comment about how everyone needs to work insane amount of hours. He definitely got viral because of that comment, but if you look at the sentiment around that post, it was mostly negative, and people didn't really like saying what he had said. So my goal always is to definitely get good reach, but keep the negative sentiment at the lowest. We don't want controversies. We don't want drama. And I know it's a strategy that a lot of people use to get clickbaits and get views. But if you're dealing with a very high profile client, you don't want that kind of negative sentiment. So the goal is to keep it at bay at all times. And if I'm looking at my strategy in terms of how I make that happen, the first thing, like I said, is high quality content, but also always fact checking everything. So if there's a comment that's been made, if you're saying a particular thing, if you're using a specific term that could be offensive, or if you're phrasing a content a certain way, so always fact checking, not just with myself, but multiple people. Do you think there's anything offensive there? Does this make sense to you? Would you like this kind of content? So doing a lot of check in with people around me to see what they feel about it. Because I may, look at it a different lens, but people may look at it another lens. So you can do that as well. If you're starting out and if you're not too sure about your content, just share it with a few of your friends and see what they think about it. Like, do they understand it? That's the most important before even asking if they're entertained. Because a lot of times the way we think we're getting our message across, it doesn't come across the right way. So it's always good to share and get feedback initially.
Right, absolutely. Well, I'm definitely noting all of that down, and it's pretty evident that me and the viewers watching will have a lot of learning from this podcast. And I really appreciate you taking out the time and answering all of our doubts. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me over. I really appreciate you giving me a time and calling me here to speak. Thank you.
Well, that's all from me, guys. For more such content, keep on watching Millennium Times.